Welcome to APA Wisconsin's video series, where we interview our great people around the state to share valuable stories with you. I'm Jason Gilman, APA Wisconsin President. Today it is my privilege to introduce Angela Puerta, an urban planner in Madison, with whom I had the great fortune of meeting on a flight from Philadelphia. We are meeting at Wonder State Coffee this morning in Madison, Wisconsin. So this is APA Wisconsin's interview with Angela Puerta, and I'm so delighted to get to do this with you today.
Yeah, so I'm a city planner for the City of Madison, and I focus on community engagement, urban design, and social equity primarily. I'm also part of the Arts and Planning Board. So main reason why I went to the National APA, we ran one of the workshops. So, and with the City of Madison, I'm currently working on the Northeast Area Plan. I'm one of the co-managers, and I'm also dedicating a portion of my time on music-related projects.
Tell me a story about what you have seen in terms of social investment in the City of Madison, like maybe something you're proud of that might relate to music or culture or social metrics.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's one of the interesting parts of music, that when we talk about music and the arts, we relate that to the well-being, our environment as a city, how we can create vibrant and interesting cities, right? But the economic aspect of music is important. So we did recently we did a study that measured the economic impact of music. So we're taking baby steps, and it demonstrated that music really makes an impact. So it in 2018 created more than 6,000 jobs, and the capital that we received because of the music ecosystem was over 600 million. So it really does make an impact. It's just that we don't usually measure it and we don't see it directly, but there are so many components that are indirect that really create and boost our economy. So yeah, and in terms of like the cultural capital that it brings to a city, the vibrancy and the diversity, because it unites people. When you go to a music festival, when you go to a bar, see a local musician, it creates this environment of welcoming and friendly, and reduces the stress levels. In general, makes you happy, right? Reduces the hormone, cortisol hormone, that stresses people, and I've noticed that even through planning. I'm a singer. I have performed before we start a meeting, and at the APA National Conference, I started our session with a song, and that immediately changes the mood of the room, right? It relaxes you. It makes you feel like more united with your next door neighbor, right? It creates an impact that way, and it's hard to measure that part, right? So that's why we wanted to do this study. We've hired this international consultant firm called Sound Diplomacy, and then created this economic impact analysis, and there was a report that was recently released, Greater Madison Music Framework Report, and it highlights the good findings, like in numbers, that music has, like all the social, economic, employment, how we are compared to other cities, and all the potential that we have. So it demonstrated that I think almost 2% of our employment is generated by our music ecosystem.
That's significant.
It is significant. Like 2% sounds very small for the general public, but it's significant when you compare it to the national average, which is I think 1.4%. New York City, it's probably a little bit more than that. So we are even above cities that are recognized for music, but we generate that employment. There is talent that unfortunately flies and go away because we currently don't have the resources to retain good quality musicians. So that's one of the struggles, and we want to fix that. But yeah, so this report is it's just the starting point of how we can convince the community, policymakers, and planners, because oftentimes, and as you said, planners don't think about music or the arts in general as a priority. Like we think about housing, we think about transportation, which of course it's important. But how are we bringing money to the city besides property taxes and other fees that the city has, but tourism?
Right.
How we create that identity.
Angela has completed impressive work creating a 6-page outdoor music guide after meeting with multiple city agencies to really understand what musicians can or can't do outdoors. She helped identify many policy barriers that needed fixing and led to more outreach material for musicians to learn about their opportunities. She's currently collaborating with the Isthmus Media Group on an interactive cultural calendar and also represents the city on the Greater Madison Music City team, which got funding to hire Sound Diplomacy to do the Madison Music Recovery Framework report. So we just talked about social investment and how it can also lead to economic investment in communities. But what would you say to a planner that might be just starting in a community about how they could get started doing good investment? And then how does it relate to social equity too?
There are many things that we can do from the policy perspective. Most cities don't have noise ordinance or sound ordinance that is friendly to local musicians. Most cities don't have a busking policy that would allow musicians to perform on street in a legal way, in a welcoming way. There are so many barriers that we have in our cities. So starting from that, in transportation, how we're building an infrastructure that allows local independent musicians to do their jobs. For example, public transportation. Are we really providing service to our night economy? So if you are going out to a bar and you want to see a live show, but oftentimes those live shows end at 1, 2 in the morning. Do we have a public transportation that can serve you? That's one thing. Sound ordinance. Let's create standards for noise. So right now the City of Madison doesn't have any standard regarding noise. So if there is a noise complaint, it would be up to the police officer to say whether that is a disturbance noise or it's okay. So actually also think for kids, the educational part is it's really important how we create a friendly environment for kids in the early age. So like through music they can learn Spanish, for example. They can learn all things that go beyond the norm, creating connections, building relationships, and that's why to establish a cultural district or an entertainment district official where the youth can have that professional development and perform, because you definitely need exposure. When you sing in your room or you play in your room, it's different than when you are outside and performing for the public, right? Yeah. So you need that expertise. Even if you have the talent, you need that space to grow as a musician. And you cannot imagine how many benefits music have brought me just because I'm able to meet people. We have a cultural district, an entertainment district that allows musicians to be there and perform at their own time.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things we're hearing in the news is this epidemic of loneliness that has occurred in society, that some people are pointing to digital media and our, sort of retreat to our own space, with our telephones and all that kind of stuff. And I could see how what you were just talking about actually helps to address that by creating networks of people that have similar interests and social events where people can get together and enjoy something together and have an experience together.
Yeah. The pandemic was a curse and a blessing in many ways. I tried to perform in front of a camera. No, I think I did it twice. And I was like, this is not for me. It's not the same. Like, some people don't believe this, but I tend to be more introverted. But with music, I become just a totally different person, more social, connect with people.
So many artists are like that. I just saw an interview of Ed Sheeran, and he's like that. He's introverted, introverted personally, but when he performs, he's different.
Yeah, because you're just being yourself, and that authenticity makes you feel more comfortable. And when people see that, you create a connection because you're touching a person's heart.
My career, of course, I saw so many people just diminish really good projects to tax base, where we just talk about tax base and taxes so much. But what you said about like touching a person's heart and, the whole experience part of life in our urban environments, I mean, that's a really important part of city planning, isn't it?
It is. We found out that there is even a bigger racial gap when it comes to managerial positions in our music industry. So that's also sad because some of the best artists are African Americans or people of color because they bring this culture, this flavor to music. And even though there is so much talent in that population, why don't they have good positions or make good money? The percentage of this disparity that we have, racial disparity, compared to the general economy. There is a disparity in our employment in general, but it's even higher in the music ecosystem. So that was kind of sad, and we have to keep that in mind. The equity component.
We were talking earlier about you mentioned how you've noticed people are happier in countries like Colombia, and I noticed it when I traveled to Costa Rica. What do you think causes that? Do you think it is partly because there's more focus on social and cultural investment?
That's part of it, and also just the culture. Like as I said before, we appreciate music, dancing, celebrations way more than money, and that aspect of socializing, of making sure that your neighbor is doing well, that their family is doing well. You create friends.
You mentioned earlier one thing that planners can do who might aspire to do more work in social investment in cities and social equity is to really think about the infrastructure that is involved in things like music. What do you think are some of the tools planners use to do that?
The most important part is to have a cultural office or an office that can really dedicate time on these matters. Because, for example, the City of Madison, we just have one arts administrator, and I help her with the music component of.
Right. Well, I'm so grateful for your time today, Angela, and I'm gonna just turn and shake your hand. So thank you so much for all your.
No,